Old School Bodybuilding Clothing Company. If it's been 3.5 hours since you last ate protein and now you're starting to freak out, you are old school. If watching someone sit on a hammer machine for 5 minutes between sets playing with their phone pisses you off, you are definitely old school. OSBBC.com for the hardest training athletes.
All right, and we're back for another, I don't know if we call it live with or what we do, Dave. All I know is today we're not going to be talking about my stacks of porns or your busted quadriceps. Today, in honor of it being the week of Memorial Day, I figured what we would do today is take a different approach. So what we're going to do today is, because it's Memorial Day and we're coming out of COVID and people want to get in shape, I kind of have an idea to help people improve their bodies. But before we start with that, I just figured, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I was just talking about the other day on Heavy Muscle Radio that I got my whole body scanned. You know, they give you. I got my radioactive iodine 2 weeks ago, and then they wait a week and they scan your whole body to see where the radioactivity went. Luckily, it didn't leave my neck area, so I think I'm in good shape in terms of I guess cancer not spreading anywhere and like developing in other places. So that was good. That was good news, obviously. I didn't think it did, but who knows? I didn't even think it would have spread at all. I didn't even think it would be in my lymph nodes because it was so small, but it was. So, you know, luckily I think I caught it pretty early on. You know, and like I said, I don't know if I said it on this show with you or I said it on another show, but most people don't realize that metastasis of cancer, in other words, cancer leaving the site of where it is and spreading throughout your body, is really a genetic thing. It has nothing to do with the size of the tumor. It has a lot to do with, do you have a family history of metastasis? And of course I do, because my mother's side, everyone died of like metastasizing cancer. So even though I might have had a very small nodule and it was only there for a very short period of time, you know, more than likely it still was spreading, you know, and thank God I probably caught it so early, because it really didn't spread beyond my lymph nodes in my neck, so it appears. So that's what I've been going through, and you know, my question, you know, I always wonder why people like to use. I think this only happens in this country. They like to use holidays to have sales on things. You ever notice that? Yeah.
It's like pre-programmed in. Everyone expects it.
Yeah. It's like, I think that people, if they have a day off from work, they don't know what to do with themselves, so like they got to go shopping. So like there's all these, you know, retail outlets, at least the brick and mortar ones originally, now obviously with online, everyone feels like they have to. And not only now is there sales on the holiday, but there's sales like the day, 2 days before, 3 days before, and they call it different names, you know, like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all these crazy things. And it's just basically holidays in this country has just become one big sales effort, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, no, and we'll discuss those things as we go.
But we love our sales in this country. We're consumers. We like to consume things, right? You know.
That's true. Very true. What I want to start with today. So this is my logic, because obviously for those new to this segment that we do, we don't ever pre-script anything ever. I know people think we do. They're like, Tony's bringing up fiber. Dave's got fiber on the desk.
The funny thing is, we don't even talk on the phone. Like we just like, you know, we'll email each other like, I'll see you Monday, or I'll see you Tuesday, or whatever.
Well, it's funny, and this is no bullshit. We're going to dive into stuff today, but I was with my cousin today. We went hiking down at this place called The Hole down here in Mayaka. It's like a 2.5 miles in, 2.5 miles out, preserved land. They only allow 10 people a day in the state of Florida onto the land. Point is, after the 2.5 mile hike in, you'll see hundreds of alligators in their natural habitat. Wow. It's really cool. Yeah, they're just everywhere. Matter of fact, we got nervous because they were getting a little close, and you have to, when you get back, you have to check in to make sure you're okay, because it gets a little funky out there. But my cousin's a health nut. He lives in Fort Myers, looks phenomenal. He's an elite CrossFitter. And we were walking back, and we were talking about supplements. He doesn't really take any anymore. But I'm like, so what do you take? And he was taking some myelin leaf or whatever for his lungs. He's like, and I take, I take psyllium husk 3 tablespoons 3 times a day. And then he goes through this whole speech. This is no bullshit. Because he's super passionate. He's like, you know, when you have a steak, picture throwing a raw steak in your fucking garbage disposal, and then it's sitting there, and break it down. He goes, that's what that shit's doing in your system. You got to get it out. So for those of you out there, you don't think about that, but it's true. Like, if you throw a raw steak in your garbage disposal and let it sit, like, that's what's going on in your body. But I'm done with the fiber.
I got even a better analogy. You want a more disgusting analogy? I breed snakes, right? And so on Wednesdays I feed the snakes. Sometimes I'll throw live rats or mice in them, but sometimes I'll do frozen. A lot of times I do the defrosted ones. I defrost rats and I'll wiggle them and the boas grab them. Sometimes, I have so many that I don't sometimes get to go through all the cages. Sometimes one decides it's not going to eat because it's in shed or something like that. There's nothing that smells more disgusting than a decomposing rodent in one of these cages. And as soon as you walk into the room, there's death. It's a death smell. That's the best I could. Well, that's what's going on in your gut. Same thing. When raw meat, starts to decompose and everything, it stinks probably, and that's why your poops stink. And so you don't want that stuff laying in your system any longer than it has to. You want it moving very efficiently through there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get it the hell out. That's going to help you stay healthy. So what my thought process is today, Dave, is you made thousands of videos, you've helped thousands of people. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the top of the body, because I just want you to give me one piece of advice on each body part that isn't something people normally think of. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go first to give you an example. Okay. And then you feel free to kind of ping off that. So, and Tyler, feel free. I know I sent you over a couple pictures here to kind of work these in, because a lot of people have never seen actually what I looked like. And I have pictures of when I was much bigger that I still need to find and put up. But this should kind of help at least people be like, okay.
This is the guy who dropped out of the USA 5 days before because he ate a Quest bar that he shouldn't have eaten.
That's right. The point is, I'm also, to be more specific, because that doesn't give context, I was literally a 5XL, and I was 282 pounds at my biggest, and I definitely was a guy that could be north of 230s on stage, lean, not fat, nice and lean. And I'm not tall. So, and I was a pretty wide guy. So the point is, I'm going to start with a shoulder one that I don't think people understand, and they always miss the boat on. And then I'd love to hear yours. Yeah. When I do shoulders, the biggest thing that I felt gave me an advantage was the fact that whenever I would do a pressing motion, I think everyone puts too much pressure on the front of the shoulder, and they don't know how to push and feel it through their rear delt. So to me, it's like you got to learn to really sit forward. It's not that you need the weight behind you, but when I used to push, I could feel my rear delt, my side delt in the engagement. If you're feeling it too much in your front, anytime I do a pushing movement, have people put their index finger on your rear delt or that side lateral head, because that's what you should be pushing with. That's where all the power comes from. And I'm not making it up. There's people that saw me do it. The most I could military press was 425 pounds for 6. And that's the most I ever did. But that's because I'm using the whole shoulder, not just a portion of it. So don't underestimate that in your shoulder development. How about you? What comes to mind that people don't normally think of regarding the shoulders?
Was that a front press that you did?
That was a front press. Okay. I used to dick around behind the head, but once I got to 260 pounds in weight, I lost the mobility. I don't have good shoulder range of motion. Yeah,
I have too much mobility in my shoulders, which probably was the reason why I probably wore them down very quick. I would routinely do 315 at my peak behind the neck presses, and I felt them way, way more than the fronts. As a matter of fact, the fronts used to bother me because I had a little bit of an impingement issue going on there, and behind the neck it was more comfortable, and I really felt, like you said, that when I went behind my head, because I had such good flexibility, even at big, I found that I really felt the side delt and the rear delt, like you said, work way more, whereas when I was in the front, I almost couldn't engage those other muscles back there. So I always did behind the neck press, and I actually felt them better than dumbbell presses because for some reason, maybe because my arms are so long, I'm not a good stabilizer of dumbbells, so I never really was able to go ridiculously heavy. I saw guys do 150 presses, and I should have been able to do that much given what I was pressing barbell behind my neck, but I couldn't. I would actually almost fall off the bench with them. I couldn't stabilize them as well. I could do 120s, or hundreds, and squeeze, but I couldn't do more than that. And, so I never tried to go heavier than I was able to handle weight. And I think that's important. You got to be able to handle the weight and feel it where you're supposed to. And I like that. I also like when people push on the area you're supposed to feel. I do that when I train people so they can have that mind-muscle connection there. But to me, behind the neck presses worked. I don't know if they're not good for your shoulders or if it caused my problem, because I know other guys that did them and they don't have any shoulder problems. So I think people don't like behind the neck presses because they're harder, and because they're harder, they can't lift as heavy, so people don't do them as much. But that was a staple, of pretty much every shoulder workout back when I was training in the 90s, early 2000s. Everyone did behind the neck presses. That just was something you did. So I still think it's a great exercise for building mass. I also think that the side lateral machine, I love that side lateral machine. You can really overload that thing, and it's really hard to cheat if you have the pad on your arm and you're not really holding on to anything. You're just kind of lifting the pad up, because I mean, what else can do your traps, I guess, can do it a little bit, but if you keep your traps down and really just lift, I mean, that kept my shoulder mass on me for years when I couldn't shoulder press at all because I had my my arthritis in my shoulders. So those are really good exercises that I found that worked well for me. Everyone else has their own type of I guess things that work and don't work. I also found it very important to keep your elbows out to the side. I know some people kind of tuck their elbows in. You got to keep your elbows out to the side when you bench and when you shoulder press if you really want to get the most out of the delts. And that's what I found. If you got to go lighter because you can't do as much weight, don't worry about it. It's fine, because at least you're using the muscle you're supposed to use.
No, it's interesting you say it, because we're getting ready to move on to the next body part, but it's true, because I agree with you on that side machine. I mean, obviously you mentioned that to me in my early days of training, and it was very helpful. The point is that anything where you're using a cable, especially with shoulder, because when you're using a dumbbell, there's kind of some dead motion at the bottom, and all the way at the top, it's kind of, you're starting to engage the trap and the neck and maybe your upper back, or you're using momentum. But when you have some sort of machine or cable, I used to like to hold the cable, the actual raw cable, and lean over, because then you can get that nice full extension and come up and squeeze. And anytime you can really stretch and contract the muscle with control under a constant pressure, it grows a lot more.
Yeah, but I found that with the cable, because I think the range of motion is too great, I think you lose something at the bottom, even though you get a nice stretch. And I find that first part of the movement is very hard for me. I don't know, like I said, because I have a long arm, if the biomechanics are not right. So I find that while I'll feel it, I have to go way lighter to be able to pull the weight up. When I train shoulders now, because I have a cable set up in my house, I literally do 20-pound, side laterals. I grab the cable, and and I could probably almost get 30 pounds, but I just feel like I'm cheating. I feel like I'm not really using it. Obviously, I'm a lot smaller now, and I'm not on any gear or anything like that, but I get a good workout with 20-pound cable pulls. Side laterals. It's amazing. I mean, the pump I get is crazy. And I always tell people, don't worry about what the weight is. If you feel like it's heavy and you're getting a good contraction, you're getting results. And I see my delts changing. I improve. And if I eat more protein, I'll grow too, just from doing those workouts. So the body only knows what it feels. It doesn't know what's on the stack,
No, that's 100% true. And we'll touch upon that as we go through the other body parts. The next one I'll mention real quick is chest. Another unconventional thing that maybe people have heard, but a lot of people on here probably haven't heard. Had a pretty decent chest. You had a nice big chest.
Yeah.
I personally, because of the width and the dominance of the shoulders, I felt everything in my shoulders. Anytime I used the dumbbells, I would feel fatigue in my shoulders, especially if I went high reps, 12, 13, 15 on sets. So I found, I actually copied this more from Dorian, that for me to feel chest the most, I did a lot of decline movements. I did them first. I did them extremely heavy, beyond failure with some rest pause, force reps afterwards. But the point is, the best way for me to get my chest to grow, for it to get it to respond and be fully developed and have thickness, was actually doing decline bench to actually build my middle and upper chest, providing I went heavy enough, of course. But that's something unconventional that worked for me. Do you have anything to add to that for yourself?
Yeah, I went the opposite route. I always found that the lower pecs were never a problem. Everyone always has a problem with the upper inners, right? I mean, now you're much wider than me, structure-wise. You have a fuller chest than I do. I'm a little more narrow. I had big delts, but I was a little more narrow. For what worked for me, and because I have long arms, is that I took a more narrow grip. I found, not close grip where you work in triceps, but like shoulder width almost. And I would, if I was doing my shots, I would do maybe a half cc in each upper pec before I would train it. And for some reason, it caused enough irritation that it allowed me to kind of feel that area more. So when I'm training, I actually was able to squeeze better because of this inflammation in here. Injecting a half cc locally is not going to make it grow, obviously, but it was enough that it created some kind of, like I said, a mind-muscle connection there because of the irritation there. And what I found was that if I got a narrower grip, it hit more of the inner pec more. And once again, I kept my elbows out to the side. And when I was on an incline, seriously, I would not do more weight than if I found my shoulders rolling forward, or which would be using front delts, the set was over for me. So that's important. And it took me like about 6 months to really learn how to keep my chest up the entire time, keep my elbows out, and squeeze only from my upper pecs. Because like you said, the inclination is you want to roll forward to get a few more reps out. I wouldn't allow that, because if I did, I was fostering bad habits. Once I forced myself only to use my upper pecs, or pecs for the movement, it took, like I said, 6 months, but then I became intuitive and second nature. I no longer used my cheated anymore. I never ever used my front delts. I never fell into those bad habits. I kind of retrained myself how to train chest. But that was a humbling experience, because I had to really lighten the weight up a lot and really just reteach myself how to do the movement properly. But once I did, I got way stronger. So I went from never being able to bench more than like 225 on an incline, and then all of a sudden I had to go backwards to 135. But once I started building back to 225, I went right past 225 to 315, because now my pecs had grown and they actually were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I think that's important. You got to really put your ego to bed, so to speak, and not allow it to dictate, what you're going to do in the gym, because at the end of the day, you want to make improvements. You don't want to look the same.
Yep. Here's a question for you, and I've never asked you this. I've been wondering it for years when you mentioned the site portions. And all the times we worked together, never once was any test suspension or phenylprop in the protocols.
Yeah.
And I never thought much of that or anything like that. But then I've only ever worked with two people. I worked with you, and I won't use the other person's name, but he trained some Mr. and Miss Olympias, and that's the only two people ever I took advice from. And I used test suspension, 100 milligrams pre-workouts. I noticed the mental that I took with some oral tests before workouts. It was like the best pre-workout of all time. Why didn't you did you ever use test suspension? And is there any reason you stayed away from it?
Back in the day, I would do it occasionally, because they used to come in 30 cc bottles, like and it was American made, so I knew it was good. But wherever you injected it hurt. Okay, and the one time I actually was using a fast testosterone, I was using and if you remember the drug Andriol or Androxin, they called it. They were like testosterone undecanoate pills. They were like gel caps, almost looked like vitamin E pills, and they would only last three hours in your system, but they would hit you really fast. And I was very tired one day, and I took 2 of them, and I went to the gym, and it made me so aggressively strong, and I almost tore my quad. So I stopped doing that, because it was giving me an artificial sense of I was stronger than I really was, and I didn't want that, because I thought that was dangerous. As far as the shots go, anything fast acting on me, like test propionate and suspension, left me really, really sore, and for days. And I think I was very allergic to test propionate, so I didn't do those drugs, because I just felt like, you know what, the incapacitation from doing the drug wherever I injected it was not worth the discomfort, because then it wasn't allowing me to lift as heavy as I could, because I was always sore, like overly sore, like someone hit me with a hammer wherever I took those shots. And the risk of infection with water-based drugs is way, way higher. It's bad enough when we would do Winstrol before a show. I just felt like adding test suspension every day, or training. I thought it was just too dangerous, so I just decided that there was no reason for it. I wasn't growing better from it. If I needed a little extra stimulation, I drank some coffee or whatever, and that got me juiced up, because I never really used a lot of caffeine. So when I needed it, if I used it, it worked. But I just don't see any benefit. And the fast-acting drugs tend to be a little bit more toxic too. And I was the kind of guy that liked to stay on for longer periods of time, so I would try to reduce the toxicity load in my body, not using orals, not using like the fast-acting drugs, trying to stay with more long-acting esters that are going to take a longer time in your body to for your liver to break them down, so it's not going to be quite as toxic. So I kind of had a multi-tiered approach to why I did what I did.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because for those that have never used it, you might be missing out a little bit in the aggression category. It'd be great before a UFC fight, I imagine, to that stuff up, because it is a noticeable difference. Yeah. I'm not one to like spit in a gym, and I used to like snarl. I couldn't believe how good it felt. Yeah. Never felt like, you give me 200 milligrams of I didn't even take that much, 150 milligrams of adrenaline. I didn't really notice a difference, but that I noticed a big difference instantly. But the point is, he's right. It is, for those that have never done it, it's excruciating, especially if it gets into the bloodstream. It really hurts. So we'll move on to back. I thought about the back stuff a lot. I think This one has a caveat for a lot of people. They might underestimate it. Once again, I copied this one from Dorian because Dorian had an amazing back. I really found a lot of benefit from using an easy curl bar or some sort of easy curl bars, even for lat pull downs, because I was able to not over dominate with the bicep. I was able to really picture my hands as hooks. And really, by getting this underhand grip, I could get far more extension, like same thing you said before, opening up the chest, getting more of a squeeze in there. Right. And I think that helped me get a lot of detail. What are your thoughts on that, or what kind of back things would be your isolated thing that people just never think of that maybe is key for back development?
You know, you make a good point. You know, the bar handle. I think that, you know, you were the kind of guy, and probably why you don't have any joint issues now, is you had very tight joints.
Yes.
And I have very good flexibility, so like I could literally do the reverse grip pull downs on the bar, on a straight bar, and not have a problem. Whereas like some guys can't supinate their hands enough to do that, or turn their hands out. I can almost turn them 360. That's how, you know, flexible I am. So for me, I did like the underground. You know, obviously I was training in the late 90s and, you know, or throughout the 90s and the early 2000s when Dorian was at his heyday. And so, you know, we all did underhanded pull downs. And I think the big thing really is the grippers. You cannot train back without using either a strap or like a Versa grip. I actually sell a jumbo Palumbo Versa grip on my DavePalumbo.com website, and they sell like crazy. They're so good because you don't have to hold the bar. They just hook around. I used to use the straps back in the day before they had them, but they're a pain in the ass. You got to wrap them and then try to tighten them, and it's these things, you literally flop them around the bar and you hold them and they grip really well. It's super easy. It takes 2 seconds. You just let them, you have them on your wrists all the time. I tell people this all the time. Ronnie Coleman used to have straps on his hands all the time when I'd be in the gym training with him. Everyone who has a big back uses straps. I mean, otherwise you're limiting yourself by your forearm strength. So it's very hard. I don't use them nowadays because I don't lift that heavy, but back in the day when I wanted to really maximize back training, the straps or the Versa grips were the one of my very important tools to back development, I think. And like you said, what I tried to do is change the grip. So I would sometimes do narrower grip. Dorian was a big believer in narrow grip. He felt that when you came away from your body, you lost strength. And I agree to a certain degree. I never did wide grip pull downs. I didn't feel like I felt like I was weaker that way, which you are because you're away from your body, closer to your body, stronger. And if you can lift more weight, as Dorian would say, you're gonna grow more muscle. So I would change from over to underhanded grip. If I came too close, sometimes it would bother my shoulders too. So I try to take almost like a shoulder width type grip. And you know, I changed it around. Obviously, early in my career, I was able to do pull-ups. And then obviously as I got heavier and heavier, that was not, I couldn't do that anymore. But I would sometimes use that assisted pull-up machine. I found pull-ups work better for me, believe it or not, than pull downs, even though it's kind of the similar movement. I don't know why, but I just felt that it was a better movement. Even if I had to kneel on that pad that kind of takes some of the weight off your body, I found that worked well. So I would mix in a lot of different exercises. You know, back is such a big, complex muscle group that, you know, you really have to be creative to make sure you hit all the areas of it. I always, you know, I see a lot. I don't see many people doing one-arm dumbbell rows anymore because they want to do machines because one-arm dumbbell rows are tough to do. You know, you got to do each arm individually. You got to move the dumbbell where you got to get the dumbbell, you know, and people don't want to be bothered with having to do that. But that's the best lower lat movement that there is because you can pull that weight nice and low to your waist. And the only thing you'll feel is that lower lat. And there's not many exercises that really simulate that. Obviously, with a dumbbell, you can come back beyond your waist, whereas with a barbell, you're gonna stop when it hits your belly, or your chest. And so that's gonna limit your range of motion. So I found that the dumbbells rows worked way better than, say, barbell in that sense.
You're absolutely right about the straps. I wasn't even thinking about it, but for those who've never seen it, it's infamous. It's still probably on RX Muscle. There's a video that I trained back to in 2013. Sure enough, I got a pretty good back and I got straps on.
Yeah.
Because it does make a difference. I used to,
you can pull
personally,
the
I used to not.
On the website if you want to show people.
I never used the straps until my last 2 sets. So say I did 300-pound lat pull downs or whatever it was. I used to warm up and I'd still get my natural activation. And then on the last 2 sets when I was actually working, that's when I'd use the straps. And you're right, I have a quick dumbbell row story. Never told you before, but when I did after the USA's out in Vegas, they send you out to one of those gyms and you do photo shoots.
Right.
And I remember it was with Gregory James and his wife. and we're doing the stuff. And I remember his wife's like, hey, do you mind doing a dumbbell row for us? I was like, yeah, I can do it. And they're like, which ones do you want to use? I'm like, do you want me to use the 130s? Now, mind you, this is the day after the show. They're like, are you strong enough to use the 130s? You're not tired? I was like, yeah, sure. And I just went. And I think because I trained so hard, I wasn't. And Jay, the other guy you sent me to, that was a good photographer, said the same thing. Like, Tony, you just train so hard. You look like you're in shape, but you're in shape. You're not just like machine in shape. You know, there's a difference.
Well, you can't. I challenge anyone to show me a great physique that was built on machines. If you want to have density and thickness and full development, free weight movements, look, they're the best. You guys can think whatever you want. I mean, you're cheating yourself if you're not doing free weight movements. And yet, if you're healthy and you have good joints and you don't have any injuries that are limiting you, and you're a younger guy coming up in the ranks, and you want to put on real good quality muscle that's three-dimensional looking, you got to do free weights. As a matter of fact, I would almost say do everything in free weights initially, because the balance aspect of it, of having to balance that bar, or whether you're squatting or pressing or shoulder pressing, that alone adds another dimension to the lifting that you're doing that's giving you so much more fuller development, because you're working all the accessory muscles and all the stabilizers that just don't get worked when you're using machines.
Yep. Let's move on. We'll move on to biceps and triceps. I guess we'll go with triceps first. I think one thing people underestimated a lot, at least for me, is, I think I learned this from you, is very rarely do people actually extend with their palm up. So everyone forgets. I mean, that's a huge head of the tricep. Everyone forgets about that. It's in tons of shots. Yeah. That's the thing. I probably learned that from you. You got to use multiple directions of your palm to work all parts of the tri. Yeah. That's my straightforward answer. How about you? Anything to add on that? Or
yeah, I mean, I learned that a lot of what I learned from Vince Taylor, believe it or not. I mean, Vince was known for lifting really light, but he made that lightweight feel heavy to his body, because he was able to use those angles and do the turns. Look, the best at movement, even to this day, I still do it. I mean, is I grab a handle, a cable handle, like one of the ones where, not like a metal one, but like one of those, it's kind of like a material that ends in like a little piece where you can hold on. And I grab it like this, almost like, here's the handle and here's the rope. And I do overhead extensions with the cable. Continuous tension, and it works that big fat head back here, which is the head that hangs when you're hitting a double bicep pose. And people don't realize that's the head that's going to make your arm look the biggest when you throw your arms up. It's not this little skinny head here that everyone likes to inject into and stuff like that. I mean, you can see I'm still ripped. This head right here looks impressive when you're standing and just flexing your arm, but it really doesn't add any size when you throw your arm up. And so people do push downs, and they're really working mostly that side head. To get that fat head, you got to do those overhead extensions. I mean, those are really, really important. And reverse grip pull downs, like you said, really hit that back fat head. And that's the key to having bigger arms when you throw them up. So it's all an illusion you're creating. But most of the people, like when they do skull crushers and they do that kind of stuff, they're really working the wrong head. And it's an impressive looking head, but it just doesn't really do anything when you got those arms up, Also, when you hit the side chest shot like this, you want that rear fat head to kind of stick out more, because it gives your arm a girthier look to it. And you had great arms. I don't, so I mean, I don't need to tell you.
Even in the ab and thigh, I mean, it all adds up. I mean, it's everywhere, and that's what I think people. Once again, I think there's a common theme. When you talk to people that know how to get their arms above 20 or 21 inches, you start to hear some common themes that I think kind of gets lost in the noise of all the content out there. So I agree with it.
I've had guys that have huge arms do a workout with me, okay, for the day. They wanted to work out with me. I said, all right, I tell them, I'm not doing skull crushes. I'm not doing any of the free weight type movements. I'll do your workout. And I get to the cable machine, and the first exercise I do is reverse grip pull downs. And I was able to go really pretty heavy with good strict form, keeping that that arm right next to my waist and pulling down. And these guys couldn't do half the weight I had. And they had I'm talking 22-inch arm guys who were skull crushing 315. They couldn't do it because it was such an isolated movement that they really weren't that strong. Their accessory muscles were very strong. And they got benefit out of it, obviously, because their arms grew. But with me, with a long arm, I just didn't feel skull crushers the way some of these other guys did. And so I needed to, and this, like I said, I got this from Vince Taylor. I didn't make this up myself. Isolate the muscle but work it heavy. I worked it heavy with good form, isolating it, and man, the pumps that I would get in my arm were mind-boggling. I would feel my triceps so much more than doing, like you said, like a compound movement, like a skull crusher, that after a while I didn't even do the compound movements. I only did the isolation movements for arms.
And the one thing, and I'm assuming this is the case, is another benefit of that, and this applies to every muscle group, but especially triceps, you were able to go heavy, and when you're training unilaterally, you can use the free hand and go well beyond, you can actually take it to true failure with heavy weight through the whole motion. So if you're out there and you train stuff, take it to extra failure. Use this frigging hand and go all the way.
I mean, I'm 190 pounds right now, and you could tell I still have arms because I have a cable set up in my house. That's why I bought it, and I train my arms the same way I did when I was 300 pounds. I'm still doing those. I'm not lifting quite as heavy, but I'm still doing the same movements. And because I'm isolating, I'm actually really stimulating the muscles, and I'm getting development, in my arms because of that on no drugs, And so you have to train smart. If you don't feel it in the muscle, then you're wasting your time.
Yep. I thought of this analogy as I've been prepping for this. I think it's a pretty good analogy because it's like people, they want to do the perfect exercise or there's something strong at it, but it's like the best analogy I could think of is it's like dating a chick that everyone else thinks is hot. She's the hottest brunette ever, but you're only attracted to redheads. What is the point? You're but you're not into it. You got to be with what does it for you.
Right. Everyone says, wow, he's so lucky he's got the hottest girlfriend, but meanwhile, you're not even really into her.
Captain Limp Dick at home. So then reaching out to Dave, well, why doesn't my junk work? Because you don't like your chick.
The first question when I get so many questions, people email, I can't get it, I can't maintain an erection. I'm like, well, can you do it with yourself? And they're always like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, well, of course. Why do you ask? I'm like, well, then you don't have a problem, obviously. Your problem is that you're with the wrong girl.
Yeah, it's the truth. Final one on the arm part. I don't even have a recommendation on bicep. What I learned, this was my own experience. I might have read it in a book somewhere or something, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it, was I figured out a while ago, at least for me personally, if I wanted my arms to grow an inch, I needed to gain about 10 pounds because your body's going to kind of put weight on everywhere. So I learned over my life, if I wanted to gain 4 inches on my arms, typically that required me to gain 40 pounds. Now, maybe not right out the gate, but the point is you can't put all the mass just in one spot. Sometimes if you want to be bigger, you have to be bigger. You need the meat to make the clay. So I tell people a lot of times, or I recommend, listen, if you're trying to make your arms bigger, sometimes you just got to be bigger. It's not just pumping it up.
The problem is that, you're limited to your genetics, essentially. So some guys just don't have big, my arms at, 19 inches, even 20 inches, don't look that big because I have a very long arm. So, how much bigger can you really make? I was 300 pounds, or something, and they weren't, so I found that the site enhancement oils definitely worked, and they worked well for me because I had a lot of muscle there already. So I was injecting them into something that was there. I wasn't trying to create muscle or pump or oil out of, just skin and bone. And I think that's an important, a lot of people ask me about site injection oils. I have them on my DavePalumbo.com website, the Chris Clark original brand, which sells out like that, and then the painless pumps. But they work, and there's a protocol, but it's not a miracle. In other words, if you have no muscle and you inject it, you're not going to create muscle where there isn't. It might take a long time, but if you have some muscle there already and you use it as an enhancement, you could add some, an inch, 2 inches to a muscle and enhance it more, so that rather than having, like you said, to gain 40 pounds of muscle to do the same thing. And I think that, once again, it's a tool that if used correctly, like an artist who has a scalpel or, or I should say like a knife that he uses for his oil paintings, if you use it properly, it'll look good. If you abuse it, it's going to look terrible. And it's one of the tools that we can use to bring the proportion of your body up, just like some guys use it in calves too, to bring the proportion of their calves up with the rest of their body. And it works better, like I said, on guys that have a lot of muscle, that maybe have a long muscle, that are, a long-armed guy, or a long, lower leg guy who might want to just need something enhancement. You get like a real short, stocky guy who uses it, sometimes you can tell right away because it looks too fake almost, So once again, good artist versus bad artist.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned it because I used to, when I was doing it in the midpoints of our working together, I was purchasing the Chris Clark pump and pose, and I did use the protocols for probably 18 months. And interestingly enough, I did notice a difference. Probably close to about an inch for me was about right. Still training them really hard. Of course, you can't make yourself get lower inserts or your gastro going to be bigger. But I was able to. I actually am thankful I did it now more than anything because, I mean, I'm not big anymore per se, but my freaking calves are awesome now because, you know, like, they're all pushed out. Like that's ironically, people used to say, "Oh, he's got no calves." Well, when you have 22-inch or 21-inch arms, your calves look like shit when they're 19. But now that like I'm normal size, people are like, "Look at the calves on this. Look at the legs on this guy." I'm like, "Where was those compliments when I was 280?" You know.
We just put a picture of you up there now. I'm shocked that you sent me that picture actually, of what you look like right now, which you actually look pretty. What do you weigh here?
207. I'm 207. I weigh 207 all the time.
I mean, you look good still. I mean, you got abs and your pecs are full and delts.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, and I just train once a week with weights. Other than that, I do the stair mill for 20 minutes. I row and then I swim a mile. So that's it. It's nothing rocket sciencey for me.
So you do your whole body in one day?
Takes about 70 minutes. I do 3 exercises, 30 seconds in between, sets of 15. I wish I could do stuff, but because my back is so bad, if I push hard, the discs want to bulge, so I can't go heavy because it pushes out the discs.
Are you still training to climb Mount Everest, or did you give that up?
Well, I got that knee surgery, so I'm kind of, when I saw my cousin today, he brought that up. He's like, I want to go to Mount Everest. And so with COVID, everything's on pause for now. So I'm going to Montana this year. I'm going to do some hiking up there, but it's in the back of my mind. But I guess we'll do one question for you I've never asked you. It used to come up on Heavy Muscle years ago. I never used it. You guys would use whispers of people that did. I might even pronounce it wrong because I don't know it. But do people still use, is it called escalin, where like you shoot it into the muscle and it makes it super big for 36 hours or something? Is that still in use?
Yeah, escalin is no longer made. It was a steroid actually. It was called formobolin. And guys, my experience with it was I used it back in the day because I used to have a good connection for it. It doesn't work on guys who, in other words, if you don't have the muscle there, it's not going to make you have muscle. But if you have a lot of muscle, it'll make it look better. So like guys like, you know, like Flex Wheeler always said that he loved the stuff because he had round muscles, and when he used it, it made his muscles like rounder looking, you know. I just felt like it just inflamed the muscle a little bit. I don't really think it did very much. It left you really, it really hurt too doing it. You'd be so sore the day after the show from all the places you put it in. Like I said, I used it. I don't think it really made that much of a difference, to be honest with you. But it was escalin was around before like the site injection, before Chris Clark had invented his original formula. So there was no other option really. But I know a lot of guys, Flex used it, and he said it in his back even. I don't know how he did that there, but it worked really, really well for him. You know, guys use some stuff today that's similar, but once again, I don't recommend those like water-based inflammatory type site type of compounds, because unless you have genetically gifted round muscles, they don't really look that good in there. You know, if you took a guy with great arms and you put it in there, they'd be greater. You know, like if you have Phil Heath arms, you use that in there, it's like, man, it looks like you added 2 inches to your arms. You put it in a guy who has like weak arms, it looks like, what the hell happened to your arms? Your arms are completely smooth. Like they don't look right, you know. So I don't recommend. What I do is I recommend using a site injection oil, you know, like a real science-based one, you know, like the ones I sell. Not that I'm trying to put it. I'm not putting anyone else's down. I'm just saying I know what I have is got science behind it, and we can go through that another time. Using that starting in the off season to build your arms, because while they do swell your arms, they do also have a muscle building effect long term, so the gains will be permanent. So it's not something you can do at the last minute. Yeah, you'll get a little bit of an effect from it, but the longer you do it, the better the response is. That's what I can tell you.
Yeah, it makes sense. I only tried 2 Winstrol shots in my life because, like you, at least that short actor, I just used to give me flu-like symptoms, and I had bad reactions.
Don't do Winstrol in body parts. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
I did it in my tricep though one time. It was probably like 3 weeks before I did the junior nationals, whatever. Point is, I had the flu. I felt like shit. My arm looked amazing. It was like 22.5 inches arm. I was like, bro, this is what these guys like.
It's not even that. People get infections all the time from water-based injections. I
remember Lee Priest 20 years ago.
Yeah, don't do Winstrol and test suspension in your arms. Trust me, don't do it.
Once again, there's a lot of disclaimers.
Especially not your calves. The calves, the circulation in your lower legs, especially for big guys who have a lot of mass on them, is terrible. I mean, literally, you could cut your shin banging against a machine, and you get an infection there if you're a big guy because circulation is not so good down there. Because the bigger you are, your blood supply wants more blood in the torso, not in the lower legs. So
it's a miracle. Thank God I didn't bring this stuff to your attention 7 years ago. It's a miracle I'm alive. Test suspension, test suspension, test suspension.
Well, no, the miracle that you're alive is when you did the 1 cc of insulin injection, the 100 units.
Yeah, with a cup of oatmeal for 18 months. I did that. And that's true.
That's the miracle.
A lot of people, that's not even computing. But like, I remember when I told Jason how that, he's like, Tony, you can't be killed. If that didn't kill you, I don't know what's going to kill you. But he just laughed. He just started laughing.
You probably have tremendous counter-regulatory hormones in your body, like cortisol and glucagon. They just must like blast out into your bloodstream,
Yeah, that's why in hindsight now it's like when I start the cut, you'd be like, yeah, he loses 23 pounds in a week. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, just stopping the insulin, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I stopped the insulin. Regarding the calves, we talked about that. The only things that worked for me, it's hard, was to find a partner and go really heavy. That was the only thing for me that ever worked for calves. Do you have any other insights on that?
Yeah, for me, the only thing that worked for calves, and I have a very high inserted calf, was to go 15 rep sets. But and I've said this, I've told people this before, but I guess it deserves repeating. I found that, because I don't know if it's because I have big feet or what, but when I would train my calves, the limiting factor was never my calf muscle. It was the fatigue I would feel in my feet. So after doing like 2, 3, 4 sets, my feet were hurting more so than my calves were, and I couldn't do any more. I couldn't do any, like my feet gave out before my calves did. So what I found was that the best my calves felt pump-wise and like contraction-wise was the first set that I would do. And now that's usually the warm-up set. So I'm like, well, I'm not gonna grow from the warm-up set. I'm like, what if I just went into the gym and did 1 set? Stretch my calves, get them warmed up a little bit. No sets, but just, just stretch, just kind of going up on my toes and stuff like that, stretching my calves. Go in, do a set of standing at the heaviest weight I can do for 15 good reps, and then do 1 set of seated for 15 reps, of the most weight I can do with good range of motion and control. And I did that twice a week. And so I was doing basically 4 sets of calves a week, and my calves were growing ridiculously. And that worked because I finally was able to, once again, if you don't feel the muscle working, you're not going to grow, right? So I finally felt the muscle growing, and I was doing it in 1 set, because what would happen after that is I just couldn't feel the muscle anymore. It was like done. And it worked for me. I don't know why it worked, and I've given it to other people who had stubborn calves, and they've told me the same thing. It worked for them. I know other guys that could do 20 sets of calves and they got great calves, but you know what? Those are the same guys that had great calves before they even trained calves. So calves are very genetic too,
Yeah, I do speculate. I'm sure you've thought about it too with your own calves, because I think the muscles get grainier sometimes as we get older too. Probably because you were 300 pounds, your calves look better when you're older, because you walked, and I walked around at 282 pounds. Like, it's a lot of weight to lug around. So now they you could tell he was big at one point, either super fat or super big,
Well, so, I had 33-inch quads at my biggest. So, it's kind of hard to make, even a 20-inch or 21-inch calf look, it doesn't look that big compared to a 33-inch quad, so.
Yeah, that's why I hated 150 or 170 pound dumbbells. Even if you could press them, your arm looks like shit. Like, it's all here. You're just like little wimpy arms. I hated it. I'm like, don't video this. Just no. Yeah. So we did that. We'll end with touching on legs real quick. The thing I'm going to say with legs is going to be this. You said it. I guess I was listening, but you weren't harping on it back then. Things were different. I would say to people regarding leg development, stay away from front squats. I did them, and that's what's destroyed my back. I think that's what's done a lot to Ronnie Coleman. So legs, I think it's about volume. I think everything and nothing works with legs. That was my experience. But the one thing I would definitely do different is front squats. I would have done a lot less of.
Yeah, I think that most people don't do full range of motion for squats. That's a big problem. I mean, and it's hard to do full range of motion when you put your feet close together. So you really got to open your stance up to a little wider than shoulder width, which will enable you to kind of flare your knees out when you go down. And when you flare your knees out, you can activate more quad and hamstring and adductor. If your thighs are touching, okay, because your legs are close and you got big quads in it, you're not going to activate those adductors, those inner thigh muscles. And that's a third of your leg size. People don't realize that. You can have great quads and you can have great hamstrings. If you don't have any adductors, your legs will look shallow. And especially when you stand from the side, because when you stand from the side, your leg hangs. So what I always tell people is, you know, if you get a wider stance, you know, and then you go below parallel, when you come up, you're going to activate glute, adductor, you know, quad, and that's the way to do it. You got to do it via squatting, you know, with deep below parallel movements. You know, some people are not that flexible, and what I tell those people is start stretching, because the more range of motion you can get on your squat, even on your leg press and hack squat for that matter, the more development you're going to get on the legs. That was, I think, a thing that really enabled me to really grow my legs really well, is I had very good flexibility, so I was able to really lower that weight quite a bit. Also, and we've talked about this before, go get a pair of custom orthotics made from either a chiropractor or a podiatrist that they'll mold your feet and they'll actually correct the biomechanics of your feet so that, you know, when you're squatting, you're using the right muscles in your legs. Otherwise, if your feet are flat or, you know, under heavy weight, your arches collapse and you kind of, you know, pronate in a little bit. Now you're using the wrong muscles in your legs and you're not using the main movers, you're using the accessory muscles. You're not really going to grow your quads the way you should. Everyone should wear orthotics all the time in their shoes, especially if you weigh over 200 pounds. And I promise you that your leg development will change completely. They're about $250 and they last about 2 years, but you know what? If you're serious about your weight training and about bodybuilding, you'll get them, because you know what? It's probably the most important tool to good leg development that you can have. And what you'll notice is if you had back pain or you had knee pain or you had some unusual, weird, quirky pains, after about 2-3 months of wearing them, it'll disappear. You'll never get them again, because now your biomechanics are proper. You know, if you have good biomechanics and you squat, the squat shouldn't bother anything. Like, you know, some people tell me that, oh, I get knee pain. Well, you know what? I get knee pain when my orthotics break down. But when I put new orthotics in, my knee pain goes away, because now my biomechanics of my feet are proper. And so that's one of the best tools that I could tell people to go out and get. That with a weight belt and with straps, you know, or reverse grippers.
You probably don't even remember, but it's still, I think it's still up on the Species YouTube channel. There's videos of me going over orthotics, and I show you when I'm around 270 pounds, how out of balance my body is. And you can see how the orthotics designed to compensate for that. So picture someone being that heavy, trying to build muscles, and then that now being present for them. Right. It makes a huge difference. And I will also piggyback on that. If the comments about flexibility is right, not just in your knees or in your back or in your shoulders with squatting, but also your calves and your ankles. Like, learn the difference between your two calves. And if you watch, especially males, females doing a walking lunge, you'll notice that most people's hips are hinging or their maneuvers are off because their ankle mobility shit. So you got to work on these things if you're really serious about building those legs.
You know what? When I would actually, you know, warm up with 135 on the squat bar, I would actually do it with 225. I could sit into a deep squat and just sit there with the weight on my back, you know, in perfect form, and just at any moment just squeeze the weight right up, and that's how much control I had when I squatted. Now, granted, when I went heavy and I got to the point where I was at my max, I needed a spot, and you know, I was a little unstable, because that's just normal. But you know, 135, 225, 315, 405. Even 485, I was completely in control of the weight. It was like almost like a joke. It was a walk at the park. I was so stable with that weight because I nurtured good form and full range of motion. And I had no injuries because I did it right. I was balanced with my orthotics, and I built up to that weight slowly so that I was able to handle the weight. And my leg development reflected that. And I think that's important, you know. I never was super strong when I first started, but I got strong because I was adding muscle. And that's the muscle equated to strength in my body. Yep.
What I will say is this, Dave, we've kind of covered the body, so that should keep everybody happy on the body front. Yeah. What I want to end with is to let everybody know on, you know, my site, for people that don't know, I do have a supplement company. Doesn't specialize in muscles of the body. I leave that to you guys, the gurus. This is the reality, and people have maybe heard this before. 30% of people die of heart disease, 30% of people are going to get cancer, 30% of people are going to have Alzheimer's or dementia. I mean, we laugh now. We got a president, whether you're political or not, you can tell the guy's not what he was 10 years ago. The point is, once your brain goes, it starts shrinking, and then the neuropathy kicks in. And people that usually die of Alzheimer's and dementia, they actually die of bed sores and infections because the body stops working, the organs stop working. So the reality is 30% of us cancer, 30% of us dementia and Alzheimer's. And that's kind of the world I live and breathe in, is, you know, outsmarting disease, taking care of the brain, and using adaptogens that were used by Vikings and used by our astronauts and used by samurai, the people that dealt with really stressful stuff thousands of years ago, anxieties and toxins and poisons. And this is what these people use to survive. And these are the products I kind of specialize in. So BabaLife.com, I'm going to be doing a sale through the whole week of Memorial Day, all the way up till the midnight on Memorial Day, where whatever you buy, you get double. A lot of times people buy 3 bottles, you'll be getting 6. So just so you know, it's going to be site-wide. You don't have to use a code or anything. Don't be that asshole that has regrets like, boy, what could I have done differently to not get one of these things? Just take control. Or maybe you just get cold sores. My Monad product specializes in cold sores. If you don't want to get cold sores anymore, if you get a breakout and you need it to go away quick, have it on hand. 5 capsules, 2 times, that thing's done. So I just want to share that with everybody for Memorial Day.
Well, I'll give you my own testimonial. I've taken your products now for, well, almost a year now. And I don't, as soon as I'm running out, I'm calling Anthony up and telling him to send me more. I take the Monad, I take the Connect, I think, right? Is that the new one?
Wisdom. You take Wisdom.
Oh, Wisdom. Yeah. Actually, I've been taking the Connect because I ran out of the Wisdom. But it's a similar product. And once again, one is for, you know, mental, cognitive, you know, enhancement. One's for immune system enhancement, especially now with, obviously, with the cancer diagnosis. I've been really upping my dosage of the Monad. And I just stay on them, you know, and I feel good. I feel pretty sharp, you know, and so I find that it's one of these things that you're not going to necessarily notice a huge. It's not like you're taking like 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams of caffeine. What you feel is just good, and I don't really get sick. And if I get sick, if everyone in my house is sick, I get sick for like a third of the time that they do. So it goes away faster. My immune system is more responsive, and so I recommend it, especially for us old folks, you know, us guys over 35 years of age, because I tell people this all the time. I hate to say it. When you hit 35, it's all downhill after that. Things don't, you know, respond as well. You don't recover as well. And when you hit 45, you start feeling it a little bit more. And when you hit 50, you know, you start thinking you're going insane. So, you know, we need all the help we can get. But it's true, though. These products work, but they need to be done all the time. You can't just take it for like 4 weeks and say, oh, I don't feel anything, I'm not going to take it anymore. It's one of these products you have to just understand the science of it. Say, hey, look, I know they work. I'm going to stay on them, and because I know they're going to make me healthier long term. It's like taking a multivitamin, multimineral. You take that, you know, we sell a ton of V-Mineralize on Species Nutrition because people understand that, you know, you're not going to take it and necessarily feel anything, but it's going to prevent you from getting sick, and it's going to help your body recover better from workouts, burn fat better, build muscle, because you're taking the right assistory vitamins, minerals, and trace metals that your body needs for all the chemical reactions. Well, this stuff you're taking for your immune system and for your mental cognitive ability, and you got to just add that in there and assume, hey, this stuff is working, and I know it's going to work. And the best evidence that it's working is that I don't feel these symptoms of getting sick all the time, or I don't feel mental cognitive decline. Then you know they're working. Okay, and that's the key, you know. Obviously now if you have mental decline or you have a bad immune system and you take them and you're better, that's awesome. But for most people, you want to start taking them now before you decline, and that's the key. Just like you don't take a multivitamin once you're super sick. You start taking it now to prevent yourself from getting sick. And that's one of the big things that I'm a champion of. I'm a big champion of preventative medicine. The reason I never finished medical school, a lot of people have asked me this, one of the reasons at least, is that I felt like I was just treating symptoms. I wasn't really helping people stay healthy. I was treating sick people. And that to me wasn't as interesting as saying, hey, let's prevent people from getting sick in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think we live in a world where, I'll use bodybuilding supplements as an example. People understand what makes a good protein from a bad one. They know about fillers, whey isolate versus a soy protein or something. People know a crappy pre-workout just uses caffeine, and then a good one uses a nice blend of multiple things. A week ago, we talked about congeal rate with your fiber product and why that's better than stuff. People might not know that one, but that same stuff also applies to mushrooms. And I'm not going to get into the science today because we've covered a lot, but I will say that people can just take my word for it, that there's differences between one company's agarikon mushroom and someone else's, and one other person's turkey tail mushroom and someone else's. The science isn't really disputable anymore. The cancer prevention isn't disputable anymore. Enhancing our T cells' abilities to recognize foreign invaders isn't really disputable anymore. So what it's going to really come down to is just being aware of it and then recognizing that Some people are growing the mushrooms on the right substrates in the Tibetan mountains, and other people are growing them on brown rice in labs, and those just don't work as good. I won't inundate everyone with the science. That's all covered in the videos, but that's the reality, and that's the difference between the products.
You know, there's a lot of horses around in my neighborhood here because we have a lot of acreage here, and sometimes you see the piles of horse manure, and there's tons of mushrooms growing them out of them. I'm like, maybe I should just powderize these and start selling these things. It's funny when you think about it, but I mean, although I don't know that much about mushrooms, do they grow them on poops? I mean,
that's an interesting question. I don't know what that could have run into, but the reason why everything I just said is important is because the only reason why agarikon and turkey tail help a human being fight off disease and recognize disease is because those mushrooms are usually thousands of million years old in the forests they come from. So there's these mushrooms usually live about 72 years, like a person.
Oh, really?
So they're multi-generational. So they've already been exposed to everything. When you grow something and it's new in a new area, it doesn't have all that memory inside of it. So when you consume it, that memory doesn't transfer into your body. You need older mushrooms that actually, otherwise the immunological benefits are 400% lower. So any studies that you come across, mushroomreferences.com, I've told you guys about that before.
So there's a higher intelligence in mushrooms, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And those are the ones I'm using. The point is, like, once again, this Just Like Species wasn't designed for everybody. It was initially designed for myself. And then I already work in supplements.
Yeah.
I make this already. Why don't I just sell it? And that's why I do it. It wasn't a get rich quick scheme. I'd be selling steroids in a bottle, and that'd be a lot easier.
And normally, and this sale is going to go through Memorial Day. Normally, if you're not in the sale, you can still use RX Muscle as your
RX-15 or RX Muscle. And I've never done a sale before. It's the first time ever I've done a sale.
So now, are these combinable? Because I know a lot of people who buy the product use the RX Muscle coupon code. Is that going to be combinable or not combinable with the sale?
No, because you're basically getting 50% off site-wide, which is aggressive.
In other words, while you're going through Memorial Day, it's going to be the 50% off sale. After that, it'll go back to the RX Muscle 15 sale.
Exactly, and the same guarantees apply. If you don't like it, you can return the products, 100% money-back guarantee. Right. Dave, I swear you can appreciate it. I've been in business 18 months now. I've never had a return. I've never even had a return.
I mean, that's, the products speak for themselves. They're very high quality. I wouldn't even bother to endorse something that I didn't use myself, so...
We trade, for people that don't know, we trade the products for Fiberlize. You sent me 6 times.
Anthony wants to be able to take a poop, and I'm like, give me the stuff you grow on those poops. So.
Yep. So that's it. So that's going to do it for this week. That's it until next time. Thanks for checking it out. Have a great Memorial Day.